Glitch paradox is unfiltered. Parental discretion is strongly advised.
Flying saucers.
Glitch paradox. Glitch paradox.
Our minds should be open on all subjects.
All right, back again. Welcome everybody to another fun podcast / YouTube stream, even though it's not live stream.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Big Man, Big Rich, here with Mad Squirrel, a mad scientist, along with a special guest, in this holy trinity going on tonight. Who do we got with us today? I'll let you introduce the special guest here, the Hail Sagan of a person we got here.
Yep, that is Hail Sagan. Say hello, sir.
Hello, Trinity. The Trinity, yeah. I like that.
I could, Batman's always been my guy, so I could be Batman. You could be Superman. Mad Squirrel can be Wonder Woman. There we go.
Works for me.
Yeah.
I am
nice. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
We're trying to get everybody together. It's been, I don't know, man. This has been a weird couple of weeks, as per usual. It's 2020. I think we're coming to an understanding of how screwed up this year is.
Yeah.
It's a cesspool.
Yeah. I gotta light up sage and stuff every morning. I wake up just to make sure I'm good before I step outside.
Because honestly,
Not a bad idea.
It's out of control, man. Like, we're getting closer and closer, obviously, to the fall months. So I know over here in our side of we're in Texas, and Hail Sagan and I had no idea. I got a message from a friend of mine that lives in Florida, and he was like, "Hey, have you guys looked at the weather?" And I was like, "No, why?" Because I had looked at the weather the day before. I guess nothing popped off. We just have nice cool weather right now. No, apparently we have a nice hurricane brewing off the shore down here, out of freaking nowhere. And
I've seen that.
Because why not? Because
now we're
one wasn't enough.
One wasn't enough. We've had so many freaking hurricanes. Now we're in the Greek alphabet.
Gotta catch 2020 really reminds me of that movie. What was it called? The Cabin. This 2020 really reminds me of that movie. If you guys haven't seen The Cabin.
I know the synopsis.
Check it out. These kids, I don't know if they were in college or high school. I think they were college kids that went to go stay at this cabin.
Yeah.
And all this crazy stuff was going on, but there was stuff going on behind the scenes. There was people actually directing what was going on at this cabin. And it was all like a big old, I don't know if they were testing out what was going on, but they were summoning monsters and killers and all that, all this crazy stuff going on. They were making bets too in the movie. It was crazy, but I finally sat down and watched it a while back because I kept hearing it was actually pretty decent. And so I sat down and watched it. I'm like, wow, okay, it's a twist I wasn't really expecting. But yeah, it's pretty. If you guys get a chance, check out The Cabin. It's actually pretty crazy.
So just The Cabin. I've seen Cabin in the Woods and I've seen Cabin Fever. So this is completely different, sounds like.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I may be wrong. I think it is Cabin in the Woods. I'm so sorry.
Cabin in the Woods, okay. Because I was going to say, it sounds similar, but...
Yeah, my bad. You're absolutely right. Cabin in the Woods.
All right, cool. Oh, yeah.
Came out in 2011. But yeah, crazy movie. I wasn't expecting that. What was that? It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. So yeah,
I think
Cabin in the Woods.
Joss Whedon, I think, was the one that directed that too.
Yeah, it has a dude who played Thor, Chris Hemsworth.
Yep.
He's in there. Forgot who else is in there. But yeah, pretty crazy. The dude who plays in a hospital show on ABC.
Are you talking about the McDreamy guy?
Does he have like bluish eyes or green? He's like he's what's his name? He's black and white, but he looks like
I can't honestly. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah, I'll find out who he is. But yeah, he's on some hospital show, I think, on ABC.
Not a
or he
clue.
was on it. I don't know if they're still airing it, but yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So we've had weird stuff.
Yeah.
We've had a weird year. That's all I'm going to say. And so now we have to prep for Monday or Tuesday landfall. We don't know if it's going to come right into us or they don't. It's kind of still far out, but I mean, basically we're being told to start expecting winds and rain probably like Sunday. So it just depends what it wants to do. Like if it decides to linger off the coast longer or decides just to chill, then that's another story completely. So I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, okay, that was a little. So it's actually right now it's still tropical storm beta, and alpha already actually formed. It was off the coast of Portugal or something. It already made landfall. That's how fast theirs hit. I was like, okay, so like within 24 hours we've had 2 developments that fast. So yeah, this has been an obscenely. I guess this is as far as historic numbers. We've had 9 named storms this season alone, and plenty of landfalls. I think they said the last time that this happened was like 1917. I think was the last time this many storms were making they actually had landfall and formation and names. I'm like, well, I didn't even know you guys named them back then, so I'm going to hell.
Yeah,
I really didn't know.
Yeah, I've been watching that. It is pretty crazy, and I mean, just in general with not only weather, but Earth activity in general with the earthquakes and crazy storms and volcanoes and everything. It's all just been crazy this year in general. And when we talked last time about and over the weeks when we've been sending each other stuff about these Earth changes, we've talked about this before. We had a podcast a while back about Planet X and everything, and is this a real possibility? And even though we talked about it, we didn't fully just go all into it and say, oh yeah, it's definite, it is, or whatever. It's just that no matter what, it seems to not want to go away, the whole thing about Planet X. I know for me, I first got into it when I was like a teenager. My mom was the one who told me about Planet X at first, and at first, I was like, oh, there's another planet or whatever, but you really didn't hear about, there was no talking about it in school or anything about that. So you really had to like do the research on your own or
right.
look at any kind of whatever conspiracy books are out there that would talk about it or video. And like I said before, I love that show Sightings. I used to watch that religiously. And there was an episode they were talking about, like they had remote viewers on the episode and they were talking about like future events. And I'll never forget the episode when they were talking about, and we talked about this before, the future map of the U.S. And it showed at first, I didn't know there was any correlation between that and Planet X or anything. I was just thinking, like, looking at the map, like, wow, that's crazy. And they were showing, basically California was pretty much gone, Florida was pretty much gone. The Mississippi River split the country. Basically, a good chunk of the East Coast was gone and all that. So it was a pretty at the time as a kid, it was a pretty scary episode. I'll never forget that because I was dreaming about it. I was thinking about it, and for all that time. And I remember when I came back across, like after a while, you kind of, you got other stuff going on in life. You're growing up and all that, so you kind of put it on the back burner. I was young, and chasing girls and all that, so you put it on the back burner. But I remember as I was getting older and really got back into researching, and looking at other um, subjects and stuff, that I came across the future map again, but this time it was talking about Planet X.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, I from what I understood, it was first discovered in 1983, I believe, like January or something
Mm-hmm.
around that time.
Hmm.
And it was discovered by an astronomer. I don't know if it was an amateur astronomer or whatever, but they discovered, and they didn't talk about it anymore. It was like, all right, I found it, and it was in a newspaper, and then you didn't hear about it anymore. That was it,
Right.
you know. And so, um, now, in this day and age where we have all this technology and everything, you see all of these sightings, all of these videos, satellite videos. I forgot the name of the satellite that focuses on the sun, um, but I've sent you um, links and videos and pictures of all these sightings, especially by the sun, whether it's from views from Earth or satellite images.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, this thing just won't go away.
Well, like
It won't go
before
away.
we jump into like the Planet X stuff, because there's so much. There's been so many dates that have come and gone,
Hmm.
and that was one thing that for a lot of people that were on that belief system that the Planet X existed. Anybody that gives you a precise date without
Hmm.
clear evidence, meaning
Hmm.
it's all based on former old documents and alleged findings that are not necessarily
Hmm.
100% substantiated, but we know that they've been talking about Planet X for a long time in different media and
Hmm.
also in sciences. That they do believe that there is some kind of dwarf star or something out in this part of our solar system or universe that it does have some
Hmm.
type of cycle. There was an article a few days ago. I'm going to do a share screen here in a second and show it to you. Um, and I always kind of like you and I send each other stuff all the time, Rich. And of course, I
Hmm.
talk to Mr. Sagan every day. Um, but we have these long discussions about, oh well, what do you think of this, and what do you think? But this is actually an article NASA did confirm this, which I thought was very interesting, because this kind of starts to take the pace. So it says NASA confirms we've officially entered a brand new solar cycle. This was published September 16th. I believe they released it on the 15th from NASA. But anyway, it says, far from the woes of planet Earth, our sun has been having a rather quiet year. A close look at its activity confirms that's what solar enthusiasts have been suspecting for a while. Our closest star has entered a new cycle. Ever since we started to track the sun's dark blemishes in earnest, humans have noticed a pattern of coincidence and temper that repeats roughly every 11 years. And there have been 24 of these cycles since observations were first recorded in the mid 18th century. And according to a panel made up of experts from NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, so the NOAA, December 2019 marked the start of number 25. So interestingly, we started a brand new
Hmm.
solar cycle on December of last year. And I find
Hmm.
that very interesting. So they're just talking about how there's going to be, you can't be blamed for not noticing the shift. There were no flashes of light, no cosmic trumpets, just an appearance of a low temperature shadows called sunspots at high latitudes. So they're keeping track on this to see what behavior and types of things that the sun does, so they can kind of catalog to see how it's interacting with the planet.
Hmm.
But what I thought was interesting was the timing of the solar cycle, and this being in December of 2019 marked that beginning for them. There's a lot of things that started in December of 2019 as far as, I guess, astronomical
No.
types of things, and on Earth as well. And we could sit here and say, well, it's not necessarily that, or maybe it's this, and what it could be related to. But this goes back to a former article we talked about, which was the alignment. And the thing, I'm gonna go back to that really quick because nobody really seems to be discussing it. And I'm like, well, I do believe that there are connections to how our planets interact with one another and how they affect the planet. I do believe that they can affect behavior on our planet, generally speaking. If the moon can affect the tides and the sun can affect they're starting to have more and more proof of this, is the interaction of, let's say, a solar flare coming off of the sun, how it affects our planet with earthquakes or different types of earth changes. It's really possible that if you have certain types of planetary alignments, you're mixing and matching a lot of energy. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
No. I definitely agree with that. And who knows? There's been articles and stuff, about electric universe, how planets interact with each other, especially when they're either aligned or they're passing or close. I think Nikola Tesla was all about electric universe and all that, and that's a big possibility. So we can never put that aside, and because when it comes to it, not only physical things, but there's been some historic things, I believe, when the planets have been aligned one way or another, that's went down as well. So yeah, definitely, and there's still much to learn about what's going on in this solar system and this universe. I mean, there's still lots to learn. There may be things out that's just beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
When it comes to physics,
We haven't
and
even touched
else.
the surface. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was going to say that right there was one of the points I kind of wanted to make. Is it's very easy to dismiss something like a Planet X because it's so vast, right? I mean, only what we can see, only what is visible space, is all we concern ourselves with. But even within that scope, we have way too much that I think we've touched on, what is it, like 10% or something of our visible universe as far as what we've been able to see and identify.
Right.
So everything else, I mean, we haven't even been able to touch our whole solar system yet, much less the galaxy and beyond that. So that's why it's so easy for people to dismiss something like a Planet X, which is why we have to go down to, well, how are things affected? How is our own planet affected during certain times? Like this stuff doesn't just happen by itself, right? And this is something that I think, obviously, I believe it needs more research. I think every time that there's research done, you read an article, and then you don't hear anything about it for years, right? Like it's like, okay, well, that's nice and that's fun, but moving on. But but if there was really enough attention paid to it, honestly, I think it could much more easily be discovered. But it's just so easy right now to dismiss it.
I think also too is a whole fear thing. It's hard for people to, people fear what they don't understand. That still stands true to this day. If the government were to come out and say, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's this huge binary star with its own system that's going to pass us by, and cause all this craziness," people would freak out, and who knows if that's exactly what will happen or not. But there's been historical records talking about it, some crazy event, especially with the pole shift. That's a big thing. And I think, just like you were touching, there's just so much to be learned. Now there's evidence of parallel universes, something, and see, that's the thing. Like, I've always been a person that's always questioned everything and always wanted to know, like, what was out. Like, I was really about, like, that Fox motor life. Like, I want to believe, like, I was really about that, because there's plenty of times when I was younger as a kid, I would just sit outside at night and just stare off in space, stare at the moon, and just wonder, what else is out there, what's going on. It's been something that's been tugging at my heart forever.
Right.
And I think, and that's what my mom's seen in me. So she encouraged me to start researching. And so it's more than just something I did and was like, oh yeah, that was a phase. It was like a passion of mine. Like I was really into it and still am. And that's one of the reasons why like I wanted to be an astronomer as a kid growing up, because I loved learning about space. I wanted to know more about the planets, about galaxies, stars and everything else. That was like my thing. So I was really big into space, and which drew me to
and how it all
wanting to learn
connects,
more.
right? How
Yeah,
it all
exactly.
connects. For me, that was always why I was fascinated by it, because
Hmm.
there's all of it is connected somehow. Everything affects everything else in one way or
Hmm.
another. Maybe it's just in our little bubble of the universe, but even still, like it's still part of something bigger. So
Yeah.
so when we're mostly familiar with our own solar system because that's really the easiest thing to kind of try to grasp. But
Hmm.
but obviously our own solar system is also affected by neighboring solar systems, and what are they affected by? How big does that go? How big does that community, so to speak, of clusters of stars and solar systems go? Like this is just one little piece. So when you start kind of branching out, it starts to hurt your brain. But like it becomes more fascinating. There's way
Yeah.
more to to try to learn and pick apart.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it could be scary too. Like if
Without a
the
doubt.
more you learn, because I mean, when I first started researching, not only just about space and stuff, just everything else. When I got into it and started learning more, it kind of makes you afraid. Like, wow, you know. And I was always like, for me, I was never a believer that we were the only living things in this universe. Like to me, I'd never hopped on that train. I could be totally wrong, but for you to have a universe as big as this is, with as many galaxies, as many planets, as many stars in this universe, it's hard for me to believe that we're the only living things out there. That's like having a 600 room 5-star hotel with only one room checked in, checked out.
Right.
So, you know what I'm saying? I was never a believer of that.
You know, and the thing that's interesting is that, and I bring this up and I'm pulling it back around a little bit, is that when we're talking about how the universe interacts and kind of plays into how it affects our planet, how it affects us, but how does it affect the other bodies that are in our solar system and how they
Mm-hmm.
all interconnect. But this article we went over earlier in the year, I go back to this because it's still going on. And I
Mm-hmm.
came across this in I'm going to say February or March. And I went through this, and it's talking about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. This was originally published December 2015 in the edition of the Mountain Astrologer, and this is by Maurice Fernandez off of his website, which I'll make sure to include a citation, because this is an unbelievable amount of work. But what he is discussing is basically the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. There's a lot of breakdown in here. This is the best way. If you're somebody who's not into astrology, even if you don't believe in this crap, okay, that's fine. I do. I hold my own beliefs in this stuff. I don't believe that you can do your daily horoscopes and tell you how you're feeling. But I can say, generally speaking, there's a lot of things that interconnect us to how our universe works. And I think that if we can be affected by a full moon, I'm pretty damn sure you can be affected by other things. So this particular alignment has a lot of historical dates that are related to it. I will make sure that it's linked up. I don't want to go through the entire thing, but there's key dates of key dates and configurations. And he does a whole explanation. So the key dates were December 26, 2019. That's a solar eclipse that comes into conjunction. Let's say at 4 degrees of Capricorn conjunction with Jupiter. Next big date was January 12, 2020. The next big date was March 20th. March 2020, that whole month, because that conjunction became more intensified through their interaction of that month. So Mars actually comes into play. Mars is a war planet. So March was the month that it came into play. We have April 5th, June 21st, August through December 2020. This is when Mars moves through Aries and direct and then a retrograde, squaring the ongoing conjunction of Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. And this is a very volatile time, is the August to December window. Some of the smaller dates that are in here are September 9th, November 13th, December 21st. And so this conjunction, these cycles that they go through, these happen every 33 to 38 years. It just depends on the elliptical orbit of Pluto. So there's a lot of information, so I'm going to skip down just a little bit, but I want to get to where we're at currently right now. This is actually taking the dates by play in history and other times in our history, for example, of key things that happened historically. So the last dates of a Saturn and Pluto conjunctions were October 5th, 1914. So you have to know that's World War I. August 11th, 1947. And then November 8th, 1982. Dates of another last Saturn and Pluto oppositions, which these are still, the planets are aligning just in different ways. So opposition obviously just means flipped over, and then you have conjunctions, which is the other way around. So either way, they're coming into a form of alignment, if that makes sense. The next key dates were November 17th, 1931. April 23rd, 1965, August 5th, 2001. Now, these they occurred. So looking back, it says here, looking back at previous cycles, we can see that a Saturn-Pluto conjunction occurred in October 1914. This was around the outbreak of World War I. This global conflict certainly reshuffled power dynamics by dissolving the Russian monarchy, the Ottoman Empire, and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, which led to the fundamental redrawing of the national borders within Europe. In 1931, there was another Saturn and Pluto opposition in Capricorn and Cancer, this defining an era that included the Great Depression, which started October 1929, and also the Geneva Convention relative to the ethical treatment of prisoners of war, which entered into effect on July 1931. So there's a cause and effect to these things. It's a very interesting cycle. But anyway, the next Pluto and Saturn cycle commenced on 1947. This was soon after World War II ended. Germany and Japan lost the military influence and dominance, creating a vacuum of power that drew in new giants, instigating a now power struggle between capitalism and communism, and the intensification of the Cold War. Saturn and Pluto were in opposition in 1966 when the Vietnam War peaked, accentuating the division between the two blocs. In 1947, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, whose aim is to foster global economic growth and reduce world poverty, which, hey, it looks like they're not doing that, but anyway, began its operations. So the year of 1947 also saw the division between India and Pakistan and their establishment as an individual sovereignty. Both countries today have nuclear weapons. Also, this is the type of stuff, it just does a breakdown about the Middle East. Now, the following cycle was in 1982, and this marked a time of the economic recession in the world with the highest rate of unemployment in the U.S. since the Great Depression. It also marked the escalation of the Cold War during the Reagan years, that later leading to the collapse of the Soviet bloc. 1982 was the year the AIDS virus was identified and reached epidemic proportions, causing a slow and painful death. The fear of injection engendered deep distrust and caution in relationships and sexual interactions. The first effective treatment to prevent fatality, the active antiretroviral therapy, was in 1996 to 97, led to the first decline in fatality caused by this condition. The year when Saturn and Pluto formed a trine. So that means it was still having that cycle at the time. After this conjunction in January of 1983, the Kailua volcano erupted in Hawaii. It has become the longest-lasting volcanic eruption, still flowing in 2015. And yes, there's been, an additional, since this obviously was published, we had another one, like where it had another eruption at that same volcano since. In popular culture, 1982 is the year Michael Jackson released his best-selling record to date, Thriller, which established his dominance over the pop market. So, this goes down the list of all these specific dates. So, what they were saying is on January 12th of 2020, this is when it begins. These usually last, these conjunctions, and the effects of these such conjunctions last approximately 2 years. So as previously mentioned, the cycle is bound to stimulate a significant geopolitical dynamics that will affect the distribution of power in many structures on a global scale. So this could include, and now this is important, Angular aspects between Saturn and Pluto are also known to reflect pandemics and natural disasters, including seismic and volcanic activity. A note of the planetary nodes, and this goes through that breakdown if anyone's interested in that, but basically this was the beginning. It foresaw it coming in. So this is the key date here I was looking at. I went back and reread this just to see where we were at, just to see where we were lining up with based on the previous dates. There's more breakdowns included in this. I've just summarized as much as I could, guys. I apologize.
Oh, you're good.
August to December of 2020. So it says the planet Mars travels through its own sign of Aries for a longer time than usual because of its retrograde cycle, which is more than 6 months. This cycle reflects an extremely volatile time that will prompt strong defensive and aggressive attitudes, as it will square with the Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto trio in Capricorn. Yay! So, typically Mars in Aries encourages a non-compromising approach, fierce defense of independence and individual rights, and is therefore expected to engender separatist movements and defiance. At worst, it can depict inflammatory power struggles and even global military conflicts, particularly if it squares in the planet of Saturn in Capricorn. On a personal level, we can expect people to defy the system and authority in an attempt to take charge of their own destiny. This may be a time when many of us will aim to start a new chapter or cut ties with our past. We can expect the divorce curve to rise, whether that applies to relationships or our professional course. A time for breakups and breakthroughs, but also to defend what is important to us. Mars seldom retrogrades in Aries, and with the last time it happening in 1988, marking the beginning of the end of the Soviet era. Fast forward to the second half of 2020, and we can expect inflammation, and radical changes. It's a battlefield, and hopefully that these will be righteous battles to defend human rights, ethical governance, and economic opportunities. We may see protest movements to foster these principles. At worst, we may see violence and military conflicts. The year ends with the iconic cycle of Jupiter and Saturn in the sign of Aquarius on December solstice. So basically, as we get to the last 6 months of the year, these are definitely things to keep in mind.
You said this came out in 2015? Article was written?
No, this article was originally written and published. This is the author of the original article, but it was published December 2015, yes. Originally published. Okay. So this is based on what they were seeing as far as conjunctions, things like that. Because it's kind of like...
Interesting stuff.
When people go and write out and do it, this is a lot more detailed. I did a summary as fast as I could through it. But the point is that where we're standing right now is that we could very easily, because of the Aries and Mars interaction, let's just make it simple. We'll keep it simple. Is that those are known war, okay? Aries being, connected to Mars, obviously. These are war planets. This is like Civil War type energy. This is not normal energy, in my opinion. There's going to be a grand upheaval, but it's also a time where people are going to be taking advantage of crises to their benefit. The thing is that energy and how we interact with our world, people limit things to a very simple stage. And this is, I guess, tying back to Planet X, tying back to Earth changes, and people claiming that we have man-made climate change. We've had man-made climate change since we lived on the planet, since humans existed. The difference is that the ones who are making the greatest impact on climate change are the assholes trying to give us legislation. They are the assholes who are making more money than most, let's just say, the peasants do. And they're trying to charge us carbon taxes because that's magically going to fix the problem. They lecture us about flying and wasting gas, and yet they have private jets and huge mansions that they feel the need to have air conditioning in because they don't want to feel like they're spoiled meat. The point is that they've wasted our time with this bullshit, and they're not focusing on stuff. They could have a long time ago. It's just more beneficial now in a political arena to do so. We're too damn late. That's my belief. We're too late. Now it's just a struggle for power. What we're seeing is a massive collective movement in all the wrong directions and all the right directions at the same time, all trying to move in one direction and not finding a common thread. There is a decline, I think, of how we're handling the world. But I think when it comes to stuff like this, where you have conjunctions and you have things like that going on, it's easy to disregard them. but I don't think you're going to have much choice. One thing that I think we've all learned from this year so far is that you can't fight change, and 2020, whether you like it or not, is going to wreak havoc. You know what I mean? So that's kind of
Yeah.
what I've seen. I mean, it's just every time, I swear to God, I'll send Rich an article. I'm like, well, it's 2020. Hey, Rich, can you? I know this is really awful, but can you resend me some of those clips, the ones of the Planet X? I had saved some of them, and now I can't find them in my bookmarks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Making me do extra work, and I got to work tonight. Yeah, no problem.
Oh, jeez. 60-40. No kidding.
She's trying to get you to 70-30, man. You know.
No, that ain't going there. No, it would have. Now that she asked me that, nope.
I'm here to
I was
slap.
cool before.
You're like, I'm gonna slap that. What is that? What was it? I'm gonna slap the slushy out of your hand or some shit. That's Rich. He's come over to slap the slushy.
Oh, see, we were ruthless in high school. We did that with no problem.
See, that's just.
And there'll be a lot of times, and at lunch, like we used to get like at lunchtime we would have Peter Piper pizza or whatever. I like on a side, like you had a cafeteria, but a lot of schools, like at least mine, we had where we can go to snack area, and you could buy your snacks and stuff like that. So it was like, they'd sell Peter Piper pizza out of there and all that, honey buns and all that stuff. And I used to be notorious. Me and my friends were notorious. They did it to me too. If it was a honey bun, I was big on honey buns, and they used to slap that out my hand all the time. I'd be so mad. And I had no more change to get another one. I'd be so disappointed.
And people.
Be honest, Rich. When no one was looking, you picked up that honey bun. Scraped off those pebbles.
Hey,
you made it happen.
I have no shame. I have no shame in my game.
That's messed up. So mean. He's all purposely throwing it on the ground. The cleanest.
I'm just resending you every. I don't know which ones you've seen or haven't seen, so I'm just kind of like going through and sending them.
Yeah, I'm trying.
And Squirrel, just to touch on the article, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously it's very interesting stuff, because it's just trying to point out again, what's the connection? How can these things affect life on Earth here? And that wasn't even about Planet X. I mean, that was just about Saturn Pluto conjunctions.
Right.
So when you think about something that essentially we're not even familiar with, something bigger that kind of throws all of those things off, that comes around maybe every few thousand years, which is what's theorized about Planet X. And you're looking at an escalation of that,
right?
So it's like, and that's the thing, we don't know where exactly Planet X is physically in all of this, and how it could be, throwing other things off, other bodies off. But I mean, that's another. I guess it's just another level of thinking about how this could intensify things even more, and it can make things pretty scary. And it seems like even if people are not aware of it, they are actually behaving in such a way already. They're behaving with just a lot of confusion, fear, anger. They don't know, it's all misplaced. They don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And it's kind of like all we can do is just be aware of it. That's what I find these things to be like tools, right? Like if we can at least have a knowledge, I mean, we're not going to know everything about this. We're not. But if we can have at least an idea and a knowledge, this can help us prepare to at least try to respond appropriately for it. That's really all this is all about, just preparing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
I saw
and I think
articles you sent there. I got them. Yeah.
You got them?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So, for me, I think the most crazy thing about it is we don't truly know how this all works, and these cycles, and the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, but it's too many coincidences for me to just blow it off and say, oh no, excuse me, there's no such thing, it's not real. I think in the next several months to the next year or so, I think we may just start. It'll become more and more apparent of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with this whole situation, we could guess all we want, and we can have a good idea of what's going to happen, but we truly don't know. We can just go off of what we research and what we come up with. Now, me personally, from what I've read and everything, I've read the worst case scenario situations if this thing is in fact legit, and I've seen or read the best case scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
The worst case scenarios of this, I don't. Nobody would want the worst case scenario if this thing is legit and it passes by like it's said it's supposed to.
Correct.
The thing about this, it's not just Planet X. It's a whole system that comes with this. And so you're talking about if this is, the real deal, this whole system coming in every 3,600 years or however long it is that it comes through with ours and on its way back out. And I've read articles about how a lot of stars have a binary twin. And even like I used to watch the show The Universe that comes on the Science Channel. I still watch it, but
Oh yeah, loved it.
yeah, they talk about it too. And it's slow. It seems to me that slowly but surely there's more articles coming out about a binary star. Does the sun have a twin? This and that. It's starting to kind of like come out more and more about these articles. And I think it's kind of like a soft opening, or when it comes to a store or whatever, you have that soft opening before the big grand opening. And to me personally, I think it may be them slowly putting information out, just kind of slowly pushing it out until the big reveal. So, it's something that I will, I keep my eye on all the time. If I come across anything new, I'm always shooting it to Mad Squirrel and, get her insight on it. But this is really interesting. And the thing about this, if this is as big as, because supposedly it's about 4 to 6 times the size of Earth. So you're thinking about Jupiter or a little bit bigger than Jupiter passing by. In ancient times, they said, I think it was Chinese manuscripts, whatever, was talking about seeing a red dragon across the sky. And there's been documents of this sudden pole shift. And how like they found woolly mammoths and other animals that was like frozen instantly with food still in their mouth and all that. So like you can imagine an animal or yourself just in the middle of eating something, all of a sudden you just froze or whatever.
Right, insta freeze, yeah.
Yeah, so something definitely went down. You think about Noah's Ark and what happened with that. And Squirrel, remember that article I showed you? That old scientific magazine that was they were talking about what could have caused the Great Flood.
And they were trying to piece it together.
They were talking about the possibility about a celestial body passing by that caused the Great Flood. And for people that don't really understand, if you have that big body passing by of that size, the magnetic pull from that, it's going to flip whatever planet it passes. So if you think about flipping the poles, you think about filling a bowl full of water, then all of a sudden you shake it, all that water is going to come out. So it was basically talking about that being a possibility of a mass body passing by big enough to have that such a strong magnetic pull that it caused the Earth to flip or cause this great flood. So, I mean, this is something, this is not nothing new. They've been talking about this for years. It just hasn't been a subject, big subject matter.
Right.
And whether that's being swept under the rug, governments, and I've heard so many stories about all these. Of course, we know about underground bunkers across the U.S. Underground facilities,
Hmm.
but I've heard so many times about countries, the world's governments, all in the know and building all these underground bunkers
Facilities
and
and.
locations,
Hmm.
yeah, facilities, because they know like what's about to go down.
And the truth is
So
too is
yeah,
that they're preemptively, numerous reasons as to why they could do that, obviously.
yeah,
But
exactly.
the biggest one is, for when I read some article, excuse me, I read this article like a few weeks ago, and it was talking about this guy used to do planning, um,
Hmm.
and basically working with different companies for like emergency management. But he also, his primary job was, he was a professor, and he was an economics professor. But it was always about planning for socioeconomic situations, things like that. So he used to do talks and give conferences. And this particular he had a conference he got scheduled for, got paid very well. So he was like, okay, he was expecting to go into a very large, auditorium filled with people, and he ended up going, and lo and behold, it was only a
Hmm.
handful of guys, and they were all these rich guys, and they were very um, uh, adamant. They went through the normal spiel in the beginning, but as the conversation wore on, and this was through like an actual journal, like this was a real article. This wasn't just some
Hmm.
hearsay. This was the guy who experienced it was on the record, and he said. Um, they were asking him about civil unrest and the best forms of security and how to ensure that those guarding their underground facilities would not turn on them for resources.
Hmm.
And he said that this happened, oh geez, just after, he said, past 2012-ish. So it was somewhere, in the years following it. And he said that these individuals, these were all very corporate type guys, higher ups, who were very concerned about the safety and how to protect themselves. It was just like emergency planning 101, but from an economic standpoint, and also what would be the best methods for this or best methods for that. And he thought it was just insane. He was like, why are these guys so paranoid? They weren't even so much, there wasn't a particular event that they were referencing. What their main concern was the resistance from the outsiders, or basically protecting themselves from the panic that would be found outside, and also worried about their own people, how to ensure that they are not going to turn on them and go after
Hmm.
them for either resources or just out of fear. And so basically the guy gave him advice, and he was, he kind of relayed what he had told them, and he said it was just a very surreal conversation with these individuals who otherwise seemed like pretty well-to-do guys, like, very well grounded. It wasn't like they were just, asking stupid questions and being really paranoid. They
Hmm.
had very specific questions about how to protect themselves and others. And I thought that was wild. I was like, well, it makes sense, because with any, let's just say for the sake of argument, whatever, come what may, whatever that is, it could be world war, it could be climate change, because we obviously go through our solar cycles, we go through planetary cycles. We have not been here long enough to truly know what that cycle is or what it looks like. But even in a case, let's say worst case, we have a giant meteor, which I'm voting for this year. I hope everyone does too. Um,
Mark
but
it down.
mark it down, guys. Rock the vote. Anyway, but it could be a meteor, it could be a Planet X scenario, it could just be the debris attached to something going by, and it could flip. We see how, look at the pandemic that we're currently in, and
Hmm.
the reaction people have just to um, wearing a mask, not being told the truth by their local officials. That's something that's been happening. And I'm not an anti masker by any means, which I'm not. But if you
Hmm.
live in an area where you do not have cases and you have had no deaths, there's no evidence that you have current cases that are becoming a bigger problem or have a problem in your community, it doesn't make any logical sense to shut everything down. Because economically, that doesn't help anybody, it just creates bigger problems. and it forces a lot of small businesses to close. Now, I do have my own feelings on what direction this is, and that's why I don't like, I want to open that conspiracy bottle of what I think it could be, and troubleshooting what that would look like. But it just doesn't seem to. I understand they're trying to be preventative, and they're trying to avoid having a mutation or having the strands like run rampant in their communities. But there is a question, though. Like, where is all this leading up to right now? Why are they forcing so many lockdowns in areas that don't have cases? Like New York City was one that's having a huge backlash about, right? People are flipping out because they haven't had any cases in months, and there haven't been any deaths, and there's still, everything is under lockdown to the point where, comedy clubs, restaurants, they're gone. The Hilton and, like, the big Hilton down there in, like, I guess what you would call it, Fifth Avenue? The big Hilton that's down there is closing. There are a lot of those types of businesses that are not able to retain because they don't have the tourism to keep them going, right? So you're starting to see this like cause and effect of having this mandatory shutdown in places where you don't have current cases going on, and they're keeping them closed. Maybe it's for political means, or some people have theorized that there's something bigger on the horizon they just have not been fully honest about, since they've also skewed numbers in many areas. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, with that going on, crippling the economy, and then now you have all this vaccine talk about pushing this vaccine out. Me and you, we already know how we feel about that.
Yeah.
And so, and you're right, it could be anything that could be a possibility, as far as why this is going down, why bunkers, there's been an increase in
That's
bunkers
wild.
being made and all that.
Yeah.
I will say this, a lot of times things are put into, a truth, the best way to hide the truth is put it in plain sight.
Yeah.
And the movies are a good good indicator of that. If we go back to the movie 2012, right? We were talking about this before. 2012, that movie, I'm pretty sure everybody and their granny has watched 2012.
Yeah, you've seen it, right, Sagan?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, I just watched it a couple weeks ago with my obviously our daughter, and she got her first dose of
disaster movie,
of world chaos disaster movie. It scared her, but she loved it at the same time.
The thing about
I'm so morbid.
The thing about what's so intriguing about that movie, the things that took place, that would be, if Planet X is real, that would be worst case scenario if Planet X passed.
Right.
That would be worst case scenario. That would be what would probably go down if it came by.
Right.
The thing about that, when they were doing, and I was talking about this before, when they were doing the promoting of this movie, if you went on the website, because in the movie they had they were building those arcs. And you had a ticket, they had a lottery, whatever, like a lot of the rich people had they were able to afford the ticket or whatever. On the website, they had a lottery, and you can go on there and see if you get a ticket to be on the arc. The crazy thing about that website was the different scenarios, and each of the scenarios was regarding Planet X. Even though they didn't talk about it in the movie, it wasn't on the movie, but on the promotional website, it was on there. So they're talking about, they're showing the different scenarios, like if it was far away, how much damage it would cause if it was closer, and then like the last one was like head-on collision,
right,
with Earth. So I'll never forget that about that website ever. I'll never forget that ever. And I heard that when they were originally the movie was going to be about Planet X, but they scrapped it and decided to go a different direction.
Right.
So it was kind of weird that they still had that going on for the promotional website compared to the movie, what actually went down. But the events that took place in the movie, the Yellowstone going off, the big one in Cali, the mass flood and all that, that's basically would be the worst case scenario if Planet X was that close passing by because of its sheer size and its magnetic pull. The physical events that would take place from the Earth flipping like that would be worst case scenario.
It's true, because in the movie, what was causing all this was essentially just a giant solar flare. High solar activity was what was causing the core of the Earth to heat up and to cause these events. Well, what would cause high solar activity? Well,
exactly.
Another body.
If you have something, you're right there pulling on it, or
celestial body. There you go. Exactly.
And there was what was that other movie?
The Day After Tomorrow.
It had Nicholas.
Wasn't it?
That too.
Knowing?
But no, I was thinking about the one with Nicolas Cage.
Knowing, or is it called Knowing?
The Knowing, that one. That was actually more of a straight like solar flare, extinction level event, solar flare that hit. Yeah. And he was, trying to break the code after that time capsule. His son pulled out or got when they at his school, and he was trying to decipher it the whole time and find out what was the end game was that big huge solar flare that hit and basically wiped out everything, and all the kids, like there was aliens that came to take all the kids and stuff away to start life again on another planet while everybody else pretty much died. So that was a crazy movie too. But yeah, Day After Tomorrow is another one.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, Day After Tomorrow, and then what's the one with Deep
And there was
Impact?
The Core also, right? There was The Core.
The Core, yeah, I was about to. The Core was another one. Yeah, so you have these movies, and a lot of times people look at it as entertainment. Of course, you go to movies to be entertained or whatever, but you also got to understand that a lot of these movies throw some jewels out there. You just have to be, good to pick it up.
Well, yeah,
and realize what they're talking about.
It's written by someone, and like there have been films that, in my opinion, now like there's several things I've heard people say, oh well, they put it in plain sight. There are people, they warn you, blah blah blah, and I kind of had to think about that, right? Because I was like, it could be coincidence, you know what I mean? Like I play that. I'm like, well, yes and no. Obviously, there are writers, there are people behind the scenes, and yes, it's always interesting to see who the writers are. And I think like there are some films that have made it out there that are very truthful in more ways than not, even though they play into the more fictional, maybe fantasy orientated or the disaster movie orientation. I've met a couple people a long time ago that did writing, for films, and they were telling me, they're like, yeah, some of the people they bring in to write these scripts are people who have researched this or have had experiences. These aren't just coming out of nowhere. This is actual information that's believed and or proven in some ways. But they have to rewrite it in a sense of being fiction for obvious reasons. And they, it's kind of like it's interesting. It's just interesting because there is nothing new under the sun. Everything has existed at some point or another. So it's kind of like, well, could be coincidence, maybe not. I know that there's definitely a lot of stuff that has happened in films where it's kind of come to pass, or in TV, and it's changed things up for a lot of people. But I think when it comes to Planet X and how it would interact or the behavior, we know that they're obviously how we're affected by planetary bodies that are outside of ourselves and how it affects our sun. Like you were saying, what would cause the sun to have such a significant EMP type scenario, right? Where it's a solar mass ejection, the whole planet's like, holy shit, what would cause that? Well, I don't think it's because the sun's just moody. I would assume it would have to take a planetary body that was large enough with enough, I guess, force to do. It's kind of like a push and shove type thing, I imagine, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that goes more into like the electric universe theory, where you have planets or whatever bumping in. What causes that friction when planets are close or they're passing by? And another thing, remember, we're overdue for a mass extinction. Like, we're overdue.
I
don't mean that to be like, hey, we all need to die. No, I'm just saying, like, remember we talked about a few shows a while back that book someone wrote that was classified. It was called the Adam and Eve story
Oh yeah,
that the
yeah,
CIA had classified.
yeah,
And they just they recently, they didn't even release all of it. They released parts of it.
yeah,
They declassified parts of it back in like 2013 or something like
yeah. You can find
that.
it on what the
But
FBI
yeah,
site. The FBI has it up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would they? Someone's just writing a story. Why would they classify it? And then I was looking over it. I'm like, oh shit. I was like, okay,
What did now
okay, all right.
for people who haven't heard about this? What is your summary about what was in the Adam and Eve? I guess book?
It basically talked about ancient civilizations, Atlantis, and what did they call the continent before? It was Lumina or some, started with an L.
Not sure.
But anyway, yeah, they talked about ancient civilizations, ancient technology, and these cataclysms that happened in the past. It also talked about the technology of what was going on prior. It was a lot of stuff that was in that book that kind of made you sit back and kind of shake your head, because you read it and you kind of get an idea as to why they would classify something like that, because it talked about events and stuff that took place that you would already know they wouldn't want nobody to read about or hear about. And of course, they doctored it up to the point where they released it to the point where they felt it was okay to release.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it talked about past cataclysms, past civilizations, and what happened to those civilizations.
It was actually through the CIA. I had to look it
Yeah,
up.
CIA. Yep.
They
Yeah.
the release date of it was 2013. And you can access it on their website, at least the pieces of the declassified
The PC
book.
version. Yeah.
And I'm not, and this is the thing, is like, it's by Chan Thomas, it says. And I don't know enough about this author. I don't know the background on the person. The name of it is The Adam and Eve Story by Chan Thomas. And it's a sanitized copy approved for release on June 24, 2013, and declassified in part. They call it a sanitized copy. And I'm like, what the hell are you sanitizing? What's in this thing? Why is this even a
we gotta
thing?
make sure it's clean.
Right. Yeah, we got to take out anything that's going to hurt you, okay? Sanitize.
And it looks like
Jeez.
the book is available on Amazon. You can get it there. But it says basically it's Adam and Eve story. They have it under Christian books and Bibles, which I find interesting. I don't know if that's, and it's the same author. So I wish there was a section on here so you could see inside. But I don't know how old this. It says. Okay.
I had a PDF of it.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot what I did with it.
This was actually published, from what it's saying on here. I don't know if this is accurate on Amazon, but it says it was published January 1st, 1965.
Yeah.
Why the hell would you classify what would, in my opinion, not to be hateful, but to be something fictional? If there was something, what the hell were they doing? Like, what was the purpose of them? Because it said that the full title is The Adam and Eve Story, The History of Cataclysms. And this is still the declassified, but it's sanitized document. This is still sanitized. This isn't even the full version, so it was published in 1963.
So only 55 pages out of 284? Like, that's
it?
all they
46
pulled?
pages.
Yeah, that was it.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, it's talking about, the document says this peek into Chan Thompson's Adam and Eve story that answers questions as to so much mystery surrounds our ancient past and discusses ancient enigmas like the pyramids of Giza, Easter Island, and it goes on the list, and the lost city of Atlantis. But why, only 46 pages? Out of 200 and something? What the hell was in this book that they're like, no? Like, how did they even find this? Oh, you can find the audiobook on YouTube, so that's That's a good watch later. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but still, like, that kind of blows my mind. Like, what's in this book that's such a damn thing? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, there's PDFs. Like, you said, I
Mm-hmm.
found a link to that. I'll send that to you there, Rich. But it's still bizarre because I don't understand why you would redact. I guess I just can't wrap my mind around that. Like, why would you want to redact something like that? Like, what the hell
Mm-hmm.
is in there? Like, now, I mean, I don't care. Let me in.
And you do wonder, of course, do they just want to give us nuggets so that,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, it's a CYA move, right?
Right.
Just to say, well,
Yeah.
we declassified it, we put it out there, we gave you just enough for you to be able to make your own decisions.
Exactly.
And it sounds to me like it's more of a CYA move. Now, obviously, there's a reason why they didn't declassify the entire document,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the part that pisses me off. Like, why? Yeah, they again, we're kept in the dark about all of this stuff, and it just goes back to they're entitled and you're not, and I don't like that.
And basically, from
But it is interesting.
what they were saying here is that it's alluding to, you know, the end. You meaning the things that led up to, like Rich had said, that these were things, like it's discussing things that led up to the cataclysm that occurred, and then the information that came after. So meaning, like, I don't know if that's kind of the general tone that I get from it, and meaning also a future, kind of related to a future pole shift or a type of pole shift that occurred at some point. It's bizarre. Like, I don't get it. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't
Yeah.
get it.
And I forgot how I came across that. I think it was one night I was just up late just researching stuff, and I forgot how I came across it, and I looked on. I was just reading. I'm like, whoa, a regarding Adam and Eve story. I just stumbled across it one night, and I was just like, wow, this is pretty crazy. Why would they classify this book, as fiction or whatever it was supposed to be? I thought it was just supposed to be like a story or whatever, a fiction story or whatever, fictional story. And
Yeah.
the CIA was like, nope, let me go ahead and take that from you, player. Let me go ahead and look in there and highlight some stuff for you, and then we'll give it back to you. So yeah, that's a very interesting story. And as far as to why they would declassify something like that, especially as many pages as they give, it's like a little sample size. Like, here you go. We'll go ahead and hold on to the rest, but you can have this.
I was looking it up just to kind of get a little bit about this document, because obviously there's a lot of people that are just like, who the hell was this guy, and why was this even like something that's still a sanitized copy of it? Like, are you serious? So this is the pages. This is kind of breaks down a little bit about the extracts. Include biblical interpretation, retranslation, comparative mythology from Samaritan to South American legends, excerpts from Pluto's, dialogues, grim descriptions of the effects that the Earth crust displacement and pole shifts can have on our planet. Supposedly, it was penned by Chan Thomas for Emerson House publisher. The author has proved to be, at first glance, about as present in the historical record as the other 80% of his books in the CIA sanitized release. So who was Chan Thomas? Why is his book censored so heavily? What information could be possibly missing from the text of the total of 284 pages of the book? We only got, 46? It says, what is Chan even short for exactly? Is it the purpose of this article to answer in detail these questions while constructing a somewhat more grounded, authoritative source of information on this topic? A natural starting place would be to relate to the contents of the original 1965 scan. In this copy, Thomas states, quote, every time the cataclysmic concept has come to life, the beast has been stoned, burned at the stake, beaten to a pulp, and buried with a vengeance. But the corpse simply won't stay dead, a possible premonition to his work censorship. From pages 14 to 17, he bullet points much of the evidence that has since come to be associated with catastrophism, presumably to be expanded on in the complex text. Examples such as the Peruvian legend, global God bless. global linguistic and similarities. Da 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 da. He does a breakdown of those. Simply put, it is hypothesized here that the original story was handed down father to son from Moses to Aaron and Zerah in the form of Naga Gilf tablets. He starts naming dates, times, locations. That's basically a summary in my own words there. He gets very specific. Also looking at astronomers from different cultures. For all its curiosities, however, the 55-page document offers no proof or data for its correlation to the presumptions made. One could assume the validations would be present in the full 284-page text. However, this brings us to a common myth that is in need of dispelling. The figure of 284 pages seems completely baseless. It is merely a number being bandied about, propagated in videos and forums with no original document present to confirm this attested pagination. Moreover, upon further research, one can find that another edition of this text is present and potentially unmolested by any government agency, the Adam and Eve story, the history of cataclysms. The Bengal Tiger Press published the book under an extended name and by the same author in 1993. At 127 pages long, it contains all of the information presented in the 1965 edition, as well as additional text of 85 pages and the length called Aftermath of Adam and Eve story, which will all be discussed. Okay. The version is largely enlightening as to why the CIA may have been so interested in censoring its contents back in the 60s. One point is the agency may have found contention with the passage concerning the funeral of the late President John F. Kennedy. Quote, I remember watching John Kennedy's funeral on television, Thomas writes, and most vividly the incantation given by the Archbishop to keep John Kennedy from the doors of hell. Nothing particularly malicious in this sentence, and nothing... certainly no claim of an inside job, as it were. However, the fundamentals of his assassination are hardly debated topics still to this day, and the event would have been fresh in the memory of American citizens, a scab that simply didn't need to be picked right then, perhaps. But furthermore, the far lengthier 1993 edition also provides raw data to bolster claims made, references other key works the author sees as valuable, interesting, or relevant to his own, and a host of fresh claims simply not hinted to in the CIA redaction. Whilst the 1965 text is enigmatic for its governmental classification alone, it doesn't exactly add anything new to the field of catastrophic research. Cataclysmic pole shifts have been proposed as early as 1872. And it says the 1993 text is far more compelling read, and like its predecessor, its contents will be elaborated upon further. Whether the entire body of the 93 text was present in its initial 1965 forerunner is up for debate. It is simply unknown. And so that's an interesting thing, and there's a lot more information here, but I want to find out more about the author really quick. I apologize for talking so much. Okay, having detailed the scope of his publication, it's now of paramount importance to understand more about Chan Thomas himself. In Body 2, Thomas anecdotally informs the reader that he was in attendance at an all-boys school in Cheshire, Connecticut, then known as Roxbury, in 1936. The author's sections of the two Adam and Eve publications offer very little information to build a clear picture from. We rejoined Thomas's life during his attendance at Dartmouth College in Columbia University.
Dartmouth, yeah.
Thank you. In Columbia University, receiving a degree in electrical engineering in 1943. We are told that throughout the early 60s, he accurately predicted seismic activity all over the world, and that he devoted 20 years of his life to the Adam and Eve story, spending 7 of those years on his retranslation of Genesis alone. That is the majority of the information given. Wider research is needed for a deeper understanding of this elusive figure. Looking at 1941 to 42 Student Directory of Columbia University, we can confirm that there indeed a C.P. Thomas, enrolled at the time of our enigmatic author, would have been. With further archival combining a newspaper clipping from 43, we can be found not only confirms his graduation in electrical engineering, but also lists his full name as Chauncey P. Thomas, as well as the name of his father and his brother, both James A. Thomas. When researching on for his family and ancestry, even more can be detailed. Born in 1920 to the aforementioned James A. Thomas and his wife Caroline Giles Van Buren, Chan Powers Thomas married his wife Eleanor Ruth Bond in December 1948, and they had 4 kids. During his career, Thomas himself informs us in Aftermath that he wrote a book on and taught childbirth for 43 years. He was awarded the Doctor of Divinity degree and was subsequently ordained a non-secretariat minister. He also claims to have taught 560 students a class on extrasensory perception at UCLA and had written a book on the subject of ESP, which was published in 1972, again by Emerson House. In fact, the publication is somewhat even less present than Adam and Eve, with copies held only by 3 libraries in the world, one being the Library of Congress. Turning attention back to the archival information, the 1974 article for Star News informs the researcher that Chan was one of only 3 cataclysmists. I can't even pronounce that. I guess people who look at like people who study.
What, studying cataclysms or
yes,
something?
thank you.
Okay.
Cataclysmologists? Okay. In the world.
Wow, I never heard of
Sounds
that
good.
one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
He was one of 3, and that in addition to giving a lecture that year, he had previously appeared on The Tonight Show, The Arthur Godfrey Show, and The Virginia Graham Show. Archival footage of these appearances have not yet surfaced. However, the Internet Movie Database confirms that in 1965, episode 640, a Chan Thomas was indeed one of the listed guests. According to the same article, his television appearances prompted thousands of viewers to write in to the network. The subject of these letters is unknown. However, one could speculate it was about his controversial ideas regarding cataclysms that may have provoked a response. Perhaps then another reason for his retreat from public eye? We don't know. Around this time in 1961, Thomas became president of the company called Chan Incorporated. In his words, this was a company dedicated to the discovery and analysis of nature's processes and their duplication and controlled form of mankind's utilization. What the fuck is that? You know? So, finally, he mentions briefly in Body 2, whilst narrating an anecdote in 1965, that he had been in the airline business for some years, primarily working in engineering and flight testing capacity. In October of 2008 issue of MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network journal, there is an entry by Dr. Robert M. Wood that confirms and to a degree details Chan's role in the airline business, alleging himself to be an ex-colleague of Thomas Wood's, states that they were both part of the Advanced Concepts Division of McDonnell Douglas, an aerospace company now owned by Boeing. Wood stated that he had become involved in work outside the paradigms of normal science, and that it was this perspective that caused him to be more accepting of ridiculous claims of others, including one exceptionally innovative Chan Thomas. He goes on to say that he hired Chan because he was a psychic who claimed to be in contact with some ETs or something, and also espoused the claims of cataclysmic geology. It would then appear that Chan's bohemian views were very much linked with his role in the aerospace industry, at least at a time. During his tenure at McDonnell Douglas, he worked on a project to develop gravity-controlled devices, a project that received some government funding as well as related to his claims in Aftermath regarding gravity. Wood reminisces over outlandish claims made by Chan, and whilst some of his other colleagues were not accepting of his views, he nevertheless praises his tremendously innovative mind. And yet this was another line of work for Chan that received a level of interest from one of the intelligence agencies. The agency goes unnamed, but it was a seemingly more harmonious relationship this time. So anyway, it goes on to describe him a little bit more. There's a photograph of him. Hold on one second. Yeah, I find it very interesting because to me it's about the author. Who is this guy? And this is obviously a ton of work this person put into this, and I want to give him credit, obviously, because credit is due. But they did a full, this is how citations are included. But this is Chan Thomas from the page 4 of the aforementioned MUFON article. So that's the individual. And this is later in life. But this is a article that was cited heavily on speculative history, written by Timothy Windsor, and published April 12, 2019. But this background of this guy is all over the place. Like, talk about bouncing. But there's lots of background on him, a lot of weird ties. But basically not a whole lot. It's still one of those things where you're not entirely sure why they would classify his book unless there was something else tied to it. Now, I don't believe it's the John F. Kennedy crap. I don't believe that. I do believe it had something more to do with his interactions with the type of how he was applying the knowledge, whatever that was. So yeah, I think that would be an interesting. I guess the 1993 copy would be a more interesting read, but even that is a question of Are we sure that's the full amount? And would we be able to tie two and two together?
Yeah, yeah, it's still interesting, and we probably will never know like the reason behind the story, what exactly was classified. It's still interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
for them to put that kind of effort, I mean, you're making some noise if you have the CIA coming in to classify majority of what you wrote or however much they did in fact classify. That's still you're still making some noise to get their attention.
yeah.
So that is still interesting. Um, and we probably will never know all of what was in that story in that book, but it still is nevertheless still interesting when it comes to that. But you hear all these stories all the time about um, stuff being hushed up, whether it's dealing with cataclysms or hell, even new when it comes to discovering new types of energy and stuff like that.
Hmm.
There's been situations where people was going to do demonstrations with water energy or whatever, and they get hushed up real quick. So you never hear from those inventors again, um, or they stop, the project, whatever it is they're working on. So it's situations. There was a guy, I forgot his name. His name was William something, but he basically came out with all this footage of the moon, and he
Hmm.
had this high powered. He had this telescope that he had mounted with a high powered binoculars or whatever he had his setup. The way he was able to like his close ups, his zoom level of the moon was so close, like it was like you're right there on the moon. That's
Wow.
how powerful his telescope was. And he showed structures. He showed um, UFOs flying by the moon, like up close. It was real, like the way the captures. If I find it, I'll definitely because I know where to look. I just got to go in archives and see if I could find it. But if I find it, I'll definitely shoot you what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And he was recording him being followed. He had government agencies on him all the time. They were flying over with helicopters. There's people following him, walking down the street.
Hmm.
People parked outside his house. Like they were on him heavy, but he kept doing it. I don't know if he's done anything recently. Um, haven't looked, probably not, because they were, like I said, they were on him heavy. So I don't know what happened to the guy, if he's still around or what. But he was recording all these instances where um, people were following him, whether by helicopter, by car. They would be just posted outside his house all day, or a dude acting like he's reading a newspaper following him. So this guy really had people on him about the footage he was putting out. So yeah, it's legit. Um, Give me one second. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. I think it's pretty wild when you have so many things that go on. It does make me question too. Is like with YouTube, like they started doing more. What do you call it? Censorship of like conspiratorial type videos, things like that. But yet, when it came to UFO stuff, they weren't as critical on those topics. So you still have quite a bit of like, I mean, a lot of the lectures that used to be available on UFOs and um, things down that alley are still kind of scarce. I've noticed that a lot have been cleaned up and removed. So I have to go to other sites to find them, like BitChute. In some cases, DLive, someone might have actually run the footage there, or even
Hmm.
Vimeo or Daily Motion, something like that. But there's a lot of cleaning up of UFO lectures and different types of talks, even for 9/11 stuff. And that's
Oh yeah.
insane because some of these conferences were for whistleblowers who have been proven correct, and yet they've been
Hmm.
wiped. And I'm like,
Hmm.
well, this is an excuse to clean up messes, but yet you're going to leave a lot of, like, I question, like, unless I know the individuals that are posting the information about UFOs or any of the, Planet X type stuff, um, I question the source every time regardless, but I still am more critical of the ones I'm not familiar
Hmm.
with. They're kind of brand new or out of left field, and no matter how amateurish or professional looking it is, I question it, and I look at how
Yeah.
many videos they have up, and like, okay, well, how did you last? How are you
Hmm.
still floating?
You gotta go through and decipher what you believe to be, true and not. There was that YouTuber, that guy, Dave Dobbs. I told you about his YouTube channel. It was a British guy,
Yeah.
and he posts these. He made his own Dave Dobbs model of this Planet X, and he made this model to talk about the rotations and everything.
Hmm.
And his videos are long. He kind of rambles a little bit, but if you sit there and watch his videos, like, he's been on this thing, like his model has been so far right, as far as his Planet X model, as far as what part of the solar system it's at this particular time,
Right.
where it's at this time. And so um, he's been pretty much on point so far as where Planet X is, when these certain earthquake activities are, what side of the sun it's on. So yeah, that's a guy. And if you don't remember his page, I'll send you his link. But he talks about it. He'll come out with a video every few weeks or whatever
And his
for an update and let you know.
is it called an inconvenient flyby? Is that the name of his page?
No, let me while we're talking, I'll find it. But yeah, I forgot how I came across this guy. I think I was just on YouTube one day
Yeah.
looking at Planet X stuff, and I came across him, and from there, that's when I was like, oh wow, okay. Like, the last video he posted was 4 weeks ago, so about a month ago almost. But he has other, like, random videos on there that's not talking about anything, like his, I guess, daily stuff. But I just sent it to you. But yeah, if you look at his Planet X stuff,
Hmm.
like, he does a good job, like, breaking it down, for the most part. But he also talks about events that took place throughout history, too. So he's pretty decent. But there's other people too. But yeah, no, I agree with you. How are certain people still alive when they talk about this? Maybe it's because they don't have enough people believing in it yet.
I haven't got
Because
your.
if you were to go outside, like if we were to go to the gas station and talk about Planet X, people look at us crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think of it's like majority of people is not even on that. They're not even, like, thinking about it or pay no attention to it or haven't even heard about it.
It's easy
So
to dismiss it, because it's like,
yeah,
oh, that's
exactly.
that's a
Yeah, so
conspiracy. That's just bullshit.
mhm.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. So, I think for certain people at this time, it's not a big enough deal for them to really, say much or be like, whatever. It would become a big deal if you had one day everybody going outside and they're like, "What the heck is that by the sun?" So that's when they're like, all right, it's time to shut stuff down." But I don't think it's that much of a major problem for the government to be like, "Okay, we got to start hushing people up now." Right now, it's more about what's going on in the country, with the unrest and everything right now. Um, and, the Pentagon came out, during this time to talk about, there are UFOs. Basically, there's, um,
And you're right,
objects
actually,
out
about
there.
that, because
Yeah.
I think the more declassification we're beginning to hear about, the more they're
Mhm.
just going to let this stuff go. Like
Yeah.
the chatter, right? The talk about it. I think.
Well, right now,
for the
with what's going on, people don't care right now
Right.
Mhm.
because of what's going on right now. So it's easy for them to be like, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's UFOs." People are like, "Man, they ain't worried about that right now." They're not worried about it right now because of everything else that's going on.
And I was looking at links you had sent me, and this is
Mhm.
actually right up Hail Sagan's alley because we just
See, I'm doing something nice. See,
like
told you.
this is actually because
I told you it'll happen.
we just talked about this not even like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and this is Marshall Masters.
Hmm.
That's my boy right there. That's my boy.
And this is an article
Hmm.
that Rich sent me from his website, and it's just he's just he does 8 updates, but this is from July 13th this year, and it's talking Wormwood 2028. Wormwood is another word for Planet X. Now, Marshall Masters has written, I mean, a ton of books. The Colburn
For the
Bible.
audience out there, Marshall Masters, not Marshall
Mhm.
Mathers. We're just not going to go there.
We're not talking about Slim Shady here. We're not talking about. No.
First time I ever brought this up to a friend, she's
Mhm.
like, and I think it was a quote or something that I put on, I don't know, Facebook or something. And she DMs me like, really? You're quoting Eminem? And I was like, let's just forget what you saw. You're not going to understand. It's okay. Not look. I said, look again, Marshall Masters. She's like, oh, thank God, because if you were quoting Eminem, I would have to slap you in the face. She says so.
Wow, that got violent.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
she was a punk. She was like this little punk girl. So yeah, she hated anything Eminem.
Oh.
So
Oh my. Anyway, Marshall here says that last Wednesday he says I received an email from a colleague and an old friend, Richard St. Laurent, with a link to a Soho video posted by Planet X News on July 5th of 2020. He said it collaborates our reporting on the South Pole Telescope disclosure videos in 2008. We spent many years studying satellite images, and we could see how they were sponged, and we had lost interest in them. That changed. When I looked at this video, my first impressions were, this is a significant image. It actually, first of all, it looks, it's like a kind of sighting. How in the heck did this image get past the minders? There were two possibilities. Someone was asleep at the switch, not likely. The other, something has changed. It could be a gentle disclosure before this is visible worldwide, and if so, by whom? As this is the first of its kind sighting, I will vet this Soho observation with 3 key questions. 1. Have there been similar sightings? 2. What makes this sighting unique? And 3. What is Wormwood and why 2028? So this is part of the image.
Yeah, that was I think that was one of the images I sent you before that article. Look at that. Look at that. There's the sun. They block this off because I think it would mess up the telescope or whatever, the satellite telescope. So they always have like the area around the sun blocked off, so you would see like the flames or whatever.
right.
But the flares, but you wouldn't actually, that particular camera, they have other cameras that you would actually be able to see the sun, but that one, they usually have that area kind of blocked off.
Yes.
But you look right next to it, and you not only see, you see like the whole system on just about. Because those are planets. Those are like planets and moons. That's right next to the big boy. That's that's like
Right.
a whole system. So yeah, that's a pretty crazy image.
So he goes, this is the screen capture I took of that video, which we'll use for our analyses. And so he does a breakdown here discussing just how significant this image is, breaking it down by area in this. It shows the elliptical. And, the truth is like, Marshall, there have been dates that have come and gone, and he's always kind of, I will say this at least, he's gotten a lot of shit in the past for information that he's given and general timelines, but like he has always prefaced it with is that nothing is set in stone. So we really don't have a perfect timeline. We don't know if this, when or he is under the assumption 100% that this does exist and it will show up at some point, and what to expect. Basically, what to expect when you're expecting. And so he has a lot of information on his site about, Planet X or Wormwood or however
You know what's crazy? Go back up a little bit. You see that illustration right there?
Yes.
That's crazy because I had in my dream there was something just like that. It was something, but the only difference was it wasn't like the mountains like that. It wasn't looking like that. It was like it was a hilly area, but it wasn't like mountains, straight mountains. But
Right.
it was very similar to that. That's freaking crazy.
And this is referencing a dream that he's discussing in the article about someone who's had, like, similar to what Rich is talking about, dreams about this particular event, a cataclysmic event where you do see this main body come in. So I think it's always very interesting. I'm always up for the conversation, meaning, okay, is this legit? I'm going to try to pull up these video images that you had also sent me, Rich, stuff that we've talked about at length. I don't want to play the video, obviously, because I don't want to screw things up, but basically, let's see, I'm pretty sure I muted this, but can you see it okay, guys?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Okay. Let me see, theater mode might be, there we go. Okay, so this is an image, once again, showing some smaller solar mass ejections, but you have the abnormal body over here, is the argument of these. And, I mean, it's hard for me to say, but there's obviously something there. I don't know if that's completely... like I said, I don't know a proper comparison for that. But this is showing you that obviously there's some kind of planetary body back there. And I'm just...
And before anybody says, well, what if it's Mercury? Mercury wouldn't be that big.
Oh, no.
On that, I mean, that thing would be tiny. Yeah, so it's not Mercury. Mercury is small.
And these are just other photos that are part of this, and this looks like it's been... Well, there's something there, but it looks like they've... Spongy sponge.
Yeah.
There's some more stuff here. And that's the thing, in the past, and this is the truth, on all of the other SOHO images, these types of images where you have the solar mass ejections that they're monitoring the sun, they have always put blocks around it. That's been going on for years. Like in these areas in the past, these used to be covered with blocks. They'd be kind of covered up, and that was a big source of, that's weird, why would they need to do that? And they said that first they tried to say it was a bug, like, oops, my bad, but that isn't true. So that didn't work out. And so here's some other images. These I thought were these were really interesting, so I'm going to back up.
Yeah, they came out clearer, those ones, yeah.
Sagan, can you see it okay?
Yeah, I can see it clear.
Okay, so I'm going to play this a little bit, because he just has different cuts of the same footage. I mean, look at that.
That's crazy. Wow.
I mean, that's so clear to me. I was like, when you sent these originally, and it was, the individual, I think this is from Planet X News, he posted these, and you sent me the images first, and my mind was blown, because these were all recent, within, I would say, since August, we started to see more of these. Before, all this stuff would be blocked out. For years and years, Rich. Years. We only saw blocked images, and now look at this type of stuff. You're actually...
Yeah, look at that.
It obviously is definitive. Like, whatever is there, it is a body.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sagan?
You know what? I mean, I can't deny that that's intriguing, right? I mean, I don't think we can deny that it is a body of some sort. It's not just some anomaly.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. And also, it kind of, for me, I always think about, well, how far back beyond, the sun is that? Because obviously it's not going to be like bordering or neighboring the sun. It's still going to be a ways out. And even most likely, probably outside of the like the asteroid belt, like it's still going to be positioned that way, because if it has a whole system to it like that, I mean, all those little planets that we're seeing, or those bodies, those moons, those are not small either.
No.
I mean, they look small compared to that celestial body, but those are big as well. So you got to think, well, for it to look that big compared to the sun, I mean, even if it's that far away, that's a big body.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, like, what we still don't know. we don't know how this works, how it interacts with everything. So, like I said, it could be definitely beyond our comprehension. But it's still, nevertheless, them images are crazy.
Here's some more. These are from August 31st. And I hope you can see that okay.
Yeah, I can see it. And yeah, you're right. That's the Soho camera, satellite or whatever, that takes those images. And like that big old white spot, that's just the sun blocked out because it would damage the camera. So they have it like blocked out.
And they use this type of camera to monitor solar activity, basically, like solar mass ejections, things like that.
Yeah. But they do have another camera that's closer to the sun. That's like a real close up of the sun.
Like Helos? Is that Helos?
They don't have it blocked out or anything that you can really see it. But yeah, this particular one, they always have that area white out.
Is that particular camera the one that's really close? Is that Helos or is that something else? My brain can't.
I believe so.
That sounds right. That sounds correct. Helos?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like HEILOS, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I remember when they rolled that out, and that was a pretty big deal because then they could really monitor the activity. And you got some amazing pictures too of the sun with its activity out of that, from what I remember. But I thought these were really impressive. I was like, well, I don't know what the hell that is. I don't know what. I don't know what. Like what's up with this?
It's just like sitting there, like, hey, how's it going? Like. And, I'm coming for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I got your number. Oh God.
Yeah.
It's always just nice funny to put a voice to everything. Why not? Why not a planet?
Like now, we about to pull up on y'all soon. Y'all gonna see what's up. Like, man. But yeah, those images are just, those are some great captures.
Yeah.
And it I don't know how much I'm pretty sure he's put a lot of effort and work into capturing these and getting them out there so quickly, because I'm pretty sure if you try to go look now at those kind of images, you're not going to see them or they're going to be blacked out. There's also, I used to look at the live cam in Antarctica, one of the stations there, and there was some interesting stuff down there too. And you could see that thing passing by, like it was freaking crazy. So and I got to go back and find where I was looking at those cameras from. But yeah, if I come across, I'll send you the link to where the station, the live feed cameras they have, and there was some interesting stuff down there too. That was pretty crazy.
I remember when people were capturing stuff off of the camera. At first, it was like, I don't know, and then I saw a couple shots in there. Live, that changed it. When I actually saw it live, I was like, well, that's weird. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
But it was only at a certain window. It had to, it had to be live shots. That's the big thing. And because after you, like some of the footage, like when you would go back to stuff that like I'd capture, like the video or do a screenshot at the time, because it was. I haven't looked at that particular like live feed in so long.
Yeah, and I hear a question, well, how come not everyone's able to see it? How come me and you can't just go outside and be like, oh man, there it is right there? And a lot has to do with timing, as far as the time of day, where you're at the time, weather plays a factor in, elevation plays a factor in it. And so all that plays a factor into when you can actually see it, whether it's above the elliptical or below it, where the sun is, all that plays a factor. I wish, and I got to go back. If I come across this video, I'll be so lucky. There was a lady in Tucson, I believe. Tucson, or was she on the west side or somewhere? Anyway, it was sunrise, early in the morning, and this lady had a perfect HD video of it sitting right next to the sun coming up.
Yeah, well, no, we've seen a lot of images like that before, or a lot of footage, and we've talked about how some of it definitely looks a little, I don't want to say altered, but maybe altered, where it just appears like there's just something off about it, and then we've seen a couple of others that it doesn't look like an anomaly at all. It looks like it's definitely solid enough to to view just next to the sun. It always seems to appear that way also, that it's like I've always seen it to the left, like of the
Yeah.
image of the sun.
I've seen it to the left and to the right. At some
Have you-
to the right, but like most to the left.
Mhm.
hmm
Mhm. Mhm.
hmm Yeah, yeah, or
Mhm.
flare or whatever, or
Mhm.
lens flare. I think there's going to come a time where you can't hide this thing anymore. If this is legit and it's getting closer, there's going to come a time where you can't hide it. Whether you're clouding the sky or whatever, there's going to come a point in time where you just can't hide this thing anymore. And I think by that time it's going to be too late as far as people trying to get ready. Because
Oh,
I
without a
think by the
doubt.
time, yeah, when you're able to see it, it's getting ready to speed up. Because the way the trajectory is of this system, it's supposed to come from up under the sun and shoot back out. And once it comes around, it's supposed to double its speed and shoot back out. And so when that happens, when it's passing by, it's going to come. I keep hearing about 3 days of darkness, and for anybody who don't know what that is, it's basically supposedly when this thing is close, it's going to eclipse the sun and block out the sun, and you have 3 days of darkness. During that time, that's when it's going to get real. And on its way out, it's going to pass by the sun and block it out on its way heading out. So on its way towards us heading out, that's when it's supposedly supposed to be the 3 days of darkness. But that's just hearsay. Um, but yeah, on its way out, the speed is going to double, shooting back out. So people aren't going to, if this goes down and it's supposed to do the damage it's supposed to do, people ain't going to have time to really prepare. When everybody sees it, you're not going to have time to prepare. It's going to be too late.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just before 2010, but yeah, definitely before 2010. Um, well, I mean, it actually looked very similar. I mean, I remember also that we were watching some images of someone on YouTube that was posting because there was a lot of solar flare activity,
Mm-hmm.
and he was posting essentially images of, of very similar actually, but it actually even looked like there were some really rigid looking shapes that were next to the sun. I mean, that's the thing that stands out to me that I remember. But it was close to that second body. That's whatever you want to call it, a planetary body, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what I remember, like first seeing, and that's what kind of turned me on to trying to find out a little bit more about this. But yeah, it's been a long time. I wish we would have
Yeah.
saved them. I wish we would have saved them.
Yeah, you looking back at it now, man, there was so much stuff I came across that I was like, why wasn't I thinking about that before? And, hindsight being what it is, yeah, there was so much stuff I came across that I can't find no more, or I would have to do
Mhm.
some real digging to find those. And hopefully, if I do, you'll be the first one I shoot it to. But yeah, I think one other thing too, with this whole planetary system, there's supposed to be this big tail of meteors and debris coming along with it. So that's another thing
Right.
we would have to worry about. If we go through the tail end of this, it's just going to be nothing but meteors and stuff pounding the Earth. So, that's another thing. If this is legit, if it is going down, that we would have to look at as well, because it's not just the passing of Planet X in this system. You have the debris field that's
Mhm.
not filled with nothing but rocks and everything. So that's another major thing that, if it were to happen, that would cause, because it's been said over time, worst case scenario, you're talking about 85 to 90% of the world's population gone when this thing passes by. because of the destruction it causes, because of the magnetic poles and everything that comes with it. It causes so much damage that you have these mass extinctions. So the Great Flood was that the last mass extinction that we can think of? Besides, dinosaurs was, longer than that, but that was the last great mass extinction, right? So, and if that was the last time this thing passed, it would make sense that if it were to pass again, you would have that similar kind of destruction or chaos. So I would hope. Now, on the Day Dodge model, he did show the worst case scenario, but he also showed a scenario where if it's passing on the other side of the sun or a certain side, that it would be, we really wouldn't have no issues. There wouldn't really be no craziness. But if it's on the flip side where it's close to Earth, it was basically showing Earth was here and Planet X, and that system was like on the other side passing by, and it was causing no problems, really, no major issues besides what's already gone. The other one, the worst case scenario, where it's like Earth is right here, Planet X is like, hey, how's it going, as it's on its way out, and with it being that close, it's going to cause all that kind of chaos. So those are really the two scenarios you're looking at if this thing is legit, if it does, cause this kind of destruction and chaos. That's the worst case scenario. People, like I said, all people have to do is just watch 2012. You want an idea of worst case scenario? That's all you got to do. Watch 2012. Okay, this is what I'm in for if this thing goes down.